I'm going to continue with my manic, magic babble, reading the insights that I wrote down when I was still in California. And these might seem absurd to those who have never heard the unheard, but I'll continue anyway in the spirit of reading this non-linear download. Seeing reality is kind of like how the eyes adjust to night or daylight. There is another adjustment. Adjusting to see this energy, the subtle. We can see the ether. Mental illness as a path to enlightenment. Self-embodiment goes to self-mastery. Master this energy. Consciousness creates the situation and situates us. You can be an instrument of this consciousness. It's still surprising what will happen. This is your magic. We don't have a mood disorder, but consciousness of humanity is in disorder. It's translated into personal moods when we don't understand and master it, when we make it personal. These moods have a lot of energy. Master this energy and wait. Allow it to work in the situation. Not how do I factor in, but how does that energy mutate? It's not personal. What must you embody to make this energy work? One consciousness. The body makes it so we experience personal consciousness most of the time, but this is not guaranteed because it isn't fundamental. The unity is fundamental. This process helps us see that through experience, but the experience is still limited. Point being, if we are all one, how would you be? Would you walk by that homeless person? In so-called mania, we can't walk by because we are also the one being walked by. We don't sleep when the dream past elements are there because the brain thinks it's sleeping. We need to wake up. Being awake is the remedy. If the brain is awake, it won't dream while awake, which is the usual thinking process that brings the past into the present. When we wake up, we use our eyes more, waking up out of the delayed waking up process, which is mediated by medications. What we notice can torture us, or it can inform intelligence. Too much noticing without intelligence to operate on what is noticed and act. With a rich inner life, we don't need as much on the outer. We are learning how not to hurt ourselves. I project because I don't act, because projection blocks seeing. See the mechanics of it, not the projection. Not the content, but the mechanics that produces the content. Create an oasis of meaning in the middle of the societal desert. If we know the reason why, we remember better because there is meaning and context, and it fits into the whole picture. Then bits can be recalled by virtue of seeing the whole picture. Then we can forget everything we know. Double negatives are confusing. Is the ego a double negative? I am. There is no I that can am. We don't like anyone to tell us anything. We want to figure it out for ourselves. But this is a moment-to-moment process and not an activity of memory. Things confirm what you are already doing. We create the signs. By speaking, we make the next sign salient. The more we create signs, the more we are on the right track. These signs appear as signs of mental illness to others. Map consciousness is living the teachings, not thinking about it. You don't have time to think. That energy cannot be used to control others, perhaps to be playful with them, but not to control. Don't put all your energetic eggs in one basket. We are too flowy, and how not to fall. We already flow. Hope versus surprise. Life can only watch life and watch what life does, not I do. It's not that life is intelligent. Life is intelligence. Intelligence is a synonym for life. Life unfolding more aliveness. It's not that the heart beats. We are a spinning field of electromagnetic energy that beats the heart. This is the field of life. We are the field expressed in many forms. The form doesn't matter. What matters, creates matter, is life. Consciousness beats the heart. There is either looking with intensity or looking through the past conditioning. It's not about talking about the same thing. It's looking as the sameness and talking as the sameness. We either have inner tensions of the past blocking clear perception, or intentions, speaking in the tense of the light of the now. That's spelled I-N-tense, T-E-N-S-E -S-H-O-N-S, intense shines like light. A lot of new quantum language was created, language that flowed out of the quantum. So then we see that way, and then just speak that language. We speak language, but we don't peak it. How can we be at our peak if our language is not? Who is going to create it? We must see the quantum to create it. Everything but acting as altruism, as one, is a mistake. It's a mistake of how things are. Life demands such action, but we have inactivated ourselves. Our programs run us until we run from them, sometimes right off a bridge. All this inner turmoil happens because we are not creating. From lifestyle design to creation, the creation will give feedback. No need to design it, as it is beyond what the mind can conceive. There is a new conception when there is no thought deception. Talking to myself is helping to make that non-linearity linear. That's part of the key. Another key, our life energy is mostly used to create mental stories, and we live in them. If we are in a high energy state, that energy could be diverted into creating a more powerful and enticing story. We must drop this. Maybe this means I need to drop the blueprint story. We can't do anything if we use our energy to create stories. Then we can't see. We can only see the story. These are some keys to avoiding the fall. Our lives have been created for us. We are just part of the machinery. Our voice changes our matter. We already know our thoughts create physical illness. It creates mental illness too. It is illness, undigested material. We wouldn't keep eating undigested food. Our voice, used in a self-dialogical way, can heal, to speak in new ways. There may be nothing wrong with thought, but that it's not new. New thoughts come from new perception, and old thoughts are in the way of new perception. We think ourself is our imaginary mental constructions, and then we can't imagine how the rest of the universe could be ourself too. Because we are in the imaging process, we are not in contact with all of it as ourself. We live in images and prefer this to contacting the real. What is real is right before me and is not the self, but all this image mumbo-jumbo is. And we want to protect that? We feel this is not me, all of this right in front of me, but this image in my head talking is me. All of this is not a repetition, yet we live in the repetitions in our head, all the while petitioning for something new. It's right there in front of us, right here now. When you put it out to the totality, there is feedback from the rest of yourself. If we don't decontrive ourselves, the universe might do it for us. Speak as the creative process. If others can't translate what we're saying in altered states, then they translate us into a mental patient. Maybe they don't need to translate it. Just love, and the translation and transformation happens. It's happening. We just need people to get the hell out of the way and start loving us. Children might say the same thing if they could put it into words. The world is designed to make us forget who we are and what we are here to create. So we walk around confused. We create confusion because we don't know how to create. I talked to myself for a year to convince myself. Why should this be necessary? Because the whole world is designed to convince us we are something we are not. It makes us all drones afraid of other drones. They could design robots to be afraid, but not to be creative. Be with that original blueprint as it's nonlinear. It's clear how we are warped away from our original creative state to being creatures of the state and the system. We are missing ourselves because we live in our thoughts and our brain is withering away. We can't find ourselves in our thoughts. We are actual when we are in contact with the moment. The moment creates us. Only the moment is creative. Just as the body needs new food and we can't survive by eating our poop, our brain needs new food, perception. Old thoughts aren't thinking, they're stinking. It's like the brain cells taking a crap and rolling in it all day. Actually, thoughts are the waste products of disengaged brain cells. They aren't seeing now, so they just produce past images to be seen. It can't see the unseen because it's never seen, it only saw. It's a seesaw. Our head is in a vice of the devices of thought. We think that we think, but it all has been taught. So much of these words and social stories are embedded in our nervous system as unwritten rules. They're written in our nervous system, and we can't respond to life, but as programs. When the programs come out of our nervous system, we can see them, and they may drive us crazy. It drives us crazy to see what's been driving us. Our drivers. Just watch. Don't act. You don't have to break through it. It's breaking through the nervous system. Self-dialogue is replacing the programmed words in our nervous system with words of our own creation, of our own discoveries, of our own seeing. It's seeing as if for the very first time. Why has our altruistic instinct to help been written over by personal pleasure and desire? To cooperate. Why does it mostly arise in crisis? Everywhere we look, there are crises. This works at a different level than thought. It's humanity. This is spooky action at a distance. It only happens when we are entangled with each other. Bring the quantum to the macro scale. We think it only happens in the nano world because we can't observe it because we are lost in the Newtonian thought programs and language structures. Map consciousness is to remove the Newtonian language structures and get us to learn the quantum language. How we make this possible. Not how we cause things. We don't want this responsibility. We just want to react to programs. That feels safe, though when we connect to map consciousness, we see the imminent danger as we see the resolution of each line of thought programming, as it is so predictable, and the quantum aspect of the brain computes it so fast to the very end of each linear thought program. We have to move beyond all this. Only the unknown is complete safety, as the quantum brain won't accidentally collapse the wave functions to the end of what is known. There are accidental collapses of wave functions when the brain is waking up from its collapse into the programs of thought. Hallucinations are holotropic texts sent from future trajectories to adjust our path. The quantum can create holograms. It's possible. The quantum is the mind, and it can create holograms just like it can create life. Holograms are messages like telegrams. Images are lifelike. We create the signs. We make it salient, the path, collapse our wave functions by speaking it. I can't edit. Our structure of thought has edited out most of our humanity. We have been edited. We've edited ourselves out of life. We've edited ourselves out, so we are bored with ourselves. We could have the greatest conversation if we didn't edit what we say inside before we say it. Then we are surprised by what we say. We find out what we will say by talking. This grows the brain, and it's never bored, looking to be entertained or entrained. We are being entertrained, entering our training to be entrained. Spiritual is a feeling. We can get addicted to the feeling of spiritual, and that prevents action. Magic is a happening. If we really felt spiritual, we would do something, act, not bask in the feeling and make it personal. Spiritual is seeing there is no personal. When there is no personal ego reacting, that magic, which is the beyond, acts on our behalf. We live life based on what we've heard from others, and we store that for supposed action later. We live in this thought sphere. We think it has value, so we store it in our brain. The intention of seeing this as valuable is what stores it. If we saw it has no value, we might not store it. Why do we want to save anything for later? We are thought hamsters. Epigestretics could reverse this. Quantum language may not have been created yet, quantum linguistics, but self-dialogue and self-embodiment is a quantum way of speaking. This is a quantum voice. Most people have Newtonian voices. Don't be so Newtonian. That's so Newtonian. That's so old paradigm. The ego is e-waste, a waste of energy. The brain cells taking a dump in the form of thought. If we suspend the language of the past, of causation, of the past causing the present, then possibly there is a transformation without cause. I saw a wondering sign, wondering about something in self-dialogue and then seeing the sign. It's not the end of the world, it's that world ending in us, but we get scared and medicated back to the world of programs. In the quantum world, there is no value judgment, so anything is possible. Value creates direction, which is limited. Judgment is the past, and the quantum is not the past. The past limits the quantum. Thought as a quantum limiter. If we are not the process of the moment, the ego process turns on, and we are processing the past. We end up talking to each other to process each other's processes, the past, instead of creating together. Connecting to wanting to save the world is creating something altruistic. It's the altruism algorithm going live, operational. It feels powerful to connect with that state, but the feeling creates stories if we just live in the feeling. We must create our dreams, not just live them. It's not a passive process. We now must master creating and happening. The ego lives in stories, so before it dies, it creates powerful stories to try to save itself. We want to share those, but then we get locked up. Drop all the stories and just create. It's a must. Do meaningless things. How can we know the meaning of anything? I don't know anything moment to moment, so I can know anything moment to moment. There is no I that chooses this. It arises. Help the broken selves before we consciously try to break ourselves. Invite them back to functioning by extending a loving hand, but understand that they have a function beyond the ego junction, one that has not yet flowered and can only flower if we drop the images projected upon them since they cannot function. This itself is a practice in suspending the known, in relationship with those who have lost it and are paralyzed by the rest. They have a function beyond what the ego can ever know and measure, beyond the limits of personal desire and pleasure. We waste energy in stories. Don't make a story out of that energy. You cannot be what you want. You can only be what you are when me is not. The wanting is the me, and you can't be the me. You can't be a want. Wanting and being are mutually exclusive. Thinking goes to what arose, what flows, what arises, what our eyes is, this light. You don't have to get what you see or know what you see. What you see gets you. It comes to you. At first it's psychedelic and helps you to look at the psyche, to see that you are not that. You don't operate as that transparently. It becomes opaque. Then that drops. We just look. The opposite of medication is meditation, and in meditation is your creation. Put your attention on something actual, like nature and the body. Playing with meaning instead of thought raises consciousness, and seeing it. Make meaning out of the past. Make up your own meanings. A state of mixed messages. People walking around talking to themselves is an attempt to be in dialogue, as we do not interact in this way with each other. The heart scares the quantum consciousness back to the body. When one has those odd experiences in half sleep, consciousness is working. See sickness. From the wobbliness of perceptions, consciousness wobbles. The ego prevents this wobble. See sickness. Ground wobble makes one sick. See sickness. Vision wobble makes the ground wobble and needs to stop and rest, or psyche sickness will come up. The ego barf. The ego gets barfed up. The moment is flow, and we can only meet it if we know that we don't know. The meaning is to be in the body while you still can, while you still need it. If you talk to the universe as the universe, it talks back. It sends you messages. The universe is on the side of life. The body responds to epigestures because it is the universe. The universe responds to gestures. Technology wants to help us. That's why it's possible. If you make things possible for the universe, it will make things possible for you. Life is communication. Technology is too, so it's part of life. It wouldn't want to destroy life, but remove our burdens. When the brain is in the state of possibilities, the universe will present how it's possible. The unwritten rules of mania, a new kind of natural selection for wisdom and kindness. Let others bring it out. I read something by a man named Williamson. He talks about search instead of research, creating questions for scientific inquiry. It seems I have too many hypotheses, too little time to do science. But then the actuality of manifestation shows what is meaningful. It's about questions, not answers. When we ask manifestential questions, the answer is in the manifestation and not in the mind. Forget existential questions and scientific questions. When medications are out of our system, it raises consciousness. Consciousness can go through the body, the nervous system rainbow. It's the rainbow system. It shows all of your colors, not just the ones conditioned into the nervous system. Nervous system is strong. We explore with our energy, our attention. Thought limits attention. We can only pay attention to conditioning, which is largely bought through marketing. The extrapolation invites the possibility to actuality. This is how manifestational questions helps one's creativity. We are all quadrants. The more we explore with our inner eyes relationship, the more we can see. The more we can see how we are related. Instead of that state of map consciousness coming in to move us to create what is possible, just create and make it possible without the state. Then we don't need this cosmic reminder. The manics are the creators. We are medicalized, but we don't understand our creative nature. We have to see beyond thought in order to be creative. On medications, even if we are going through life, we aren't facing what is, but what is translated through medications. So it keeps building up and repeating through the allostatic load process. Adopting other languaging to extrapolate to this understanding, but not using it as the understanding. We don't understand our unlimited nature. We have limited parts and unlimited parts, and ultimately we are still the whole thing. Don't assume that others are there. Wait for an invitation to be related creatively instead of associatively based on past images. The new source of information is within us. Outform it. We must outform our mania. We meet life, and our psychology makes us irrelevant to creativity and part of the machine. We are trying to figure out our past self instead of this creative self. The brain is trying to create a different order, the order of creativity and creating ourselves instead of thinking, thus thinking we know ourselves. By knowing ourselves, we can't create ourselves. We can create ourselves to be a part of each other. This is already so. We just don't understand the operation of this. It must be created in the brain by creating. What is created in the brain first, through creational manifestational questions? Ask questions to create oneself. This brain has spent so much time to create this way out of the psychological structures that block the creation-ological structures. This brain has spent so much time talking about mental illness. Mental illness is misunderstood creatorship, a medium of creativity, not just healing. Creation is healing. Healing is limited as we don't understand healing for what? To create, not to go backwards. And that the mediums of creation are infected by that. It may take a while to detox from my own context, just like detoxing from conditioning. Responsibility. Respond to the ability to create oneself. Maniaology. Recovery is giving up on self-creation to try to be normal. Creating oneself isn't normal. It's trans-normal, super-normal. Don't fit into old life and old ways. Must create self to fit into your own creation. That is the only thing, energy, that you can fit into. Even grow out of that day by day. Not recovering into old functioning. They want us to function. We want to create. The new function is to create. Also, it's important in terms of the evolution of consciousness and technology. This creativity cannot be computerized. The regulars have computer eyes glued to the computer. Also, it's important in terms of the evolution of consciousness and technology. Life can't be. The ego can be. We spend our energy computerizing our ego, not using technology for altitude. Krishnamurti said, "So, how is one to set about breaking down the pattern? First, we must be sure that the analytical process done by the psychologist, the analyst, or yourself has no value when we are concerned with complete transformation, complete mutation. It may have some value in making a person who is mentally ill able to fit in more with this present unhealthy society, but we are not talking about that." End quote. Learn the language of creativity instead of recovering from mental illness. We are recovering our multidimensional intelligence. We're covering over our superhumanity. I'm a recovering creative, recovering from being hypnotized out of my potential, discovering creativity, recreation of oneself from the map, consciousness, blueprint, teal print, forgetting about all this mental illness. Not how can we dissolve the self, but how can we dissolve into the one self, the one consciousness. While we are healing and transforming, we ask, what is the world asking of us? From craving to creating, to creativity, we crave pleasure because we don't create with consciousness. We have filled our consciousness with the content of pleasure. What is the vision of no division? Is there a superhuman community? The observer effect. One's observations affect another thing is a misunderstanding. There are no separate things. If we change how we see something, this collapses wave functions of what we are able to see next. If we change how we see something, it changes our relationship to it, so it changes. We exist in relationship, not as separate things. It's not what is happening in me, but what is happening in relationship, in the world, what is happening in humanity. What is the human brain trying to do? Identify with consciousness? Be awake? Conscious? Change our relationship to one another and the world? The brain being in a state, realizing that it is the whole world, can lead to suicide. Look what I've done. There is no I, only we. Therefore we must think together. There is no separate thought. We must change the soundscape and consciousness, the memes. When the mind is silent, we can harvest new memes from consciousness and make them more prominent. We are all thinking together about separation, which is an illusion that can never be solved. After seeing one is the world, brush your teeth, shower, eat, sleep. The brain can't relate to the world anymore. It can relate as the world. Communications mixed and appear out of order in time because we are at different levels of consciousness. That's enough for this bit of blabbing. There's a lot more, and it likely doesn't make that much sense. This is more sharing the process of giving voice to some of this for the sake of acknowledging that it was downloaded through this consciousness and not putting any kind of value on it. It's just a different place of speaking and blah, 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 blah. This has